I'd just like to welcome everyone. My name is David Turner. I'm a trustee with the Dutchess County Historical Society. I've been collecting postcards for the past 26 or so years since I was a kid. So mostly collecting Dutchess County, but I've expanded to collect the entire Hudson Valley. One of my favorite things to collect is roadside images and views of automobiles. So when Melody Moore came up with this great idea, I can see she's a little shocked by this, but yes, she came up with this great idea. I decided to run with it and create a presentation for it. So I hope you guys enjoy. So how the automobile changed the Hudson Valley, a view through postcards. So the postcard craze started in about 1906 and lasted until about 1918. What German publishers were the main producers of postcards in the United States. So once we went to war and we kind of destroyed the German industrial base there, postcards moved back to the United States. And by that time, the automobile was really taking off. So a lot of the postcards between 1918 and the 1940s did focus on the automobile and the roadside. So I'd like to take everyone through kind of the evolution of the roadside in Dutchess County with some other views from outside to kind of fill any holes that we may have. Showing, 1906, everything's still horse and buggy, more railroad focused, and then how that changed once the automobile was introduced. So I'd like to start with this image. I actually found this image about 2 weeks ago in Phoenix, Arizona, when I was down there. It is the oldest post office in Dutchess County at the time in 1909 in South Dover, which is a tiny hamlet right on the Connecticut border in eastern Dutchess County. You might wonder why I start with this when I'm talking about automobiles, but I just wanted you to see, what life was like in Dutchess County before the automobile. So think of the colonial era up until about the 1890s. Your life was very much centered on your village or your hamlet. Everything was there for you, your post office, the grocery store, the butcher, everything was in your immediate vicinity, in walking distance. Here you can see that there are trolley tracks in front of this building, but that wasn't a trolley for people. That was bringing marble quarry rock from the quarry up to the railroad station in Wingdale. So if you think about living here in South Dover, you don't have a railroad station, you don't have a trolley. So if you were trying to get from here to Poughkeepsie, your only way to do it would be to either hitch a ride on someone's carriage to the railroad station in Wingdale, take the train down to Pauling, switch trains to go over towards either Hopewell or Beacon to switch a train yet again to go up to Poughkeepsie. So you can see how much labor there was involved to get to a more populated center. It would have taken you all day. You would have a lot of logistics of how to catch your train and everything like that. It's just very difficult to move around in this time. So the talk, I'm going to try to, prove 3 points, the early adoption of the automobile, the economic impact, and the social and cultural changes that ensued from that. This photograph here is of a 1931 Oldsmobile coupe owned by a Millerton family. You can see they're showing it off. It was a status symbol to have, one of these beautiful automobiles. It had the rumble seat in the back. You can see their height of 1920s fashion they have there. But what was travel before the automobile? The top left here, we have the Central New England Railroad Depot in Mount Ross, which is a tiny hamlet in the northern part of the county. And this was the first real transportation that really changed the landscape. Of course, we had river travel along the Hudson, but the railroad really opened up the interior of the county itself. So hamlets and villages would grow along the railroad tracks, along the junctions of those as well. And that was the really first boon of transportation in Dutchess County, was the railroad. Moving to the right here, we have the Newburgh and Beacon Ferry. Ferry lines, of course, connected the Hudson River to other communities, Newburgh to Beacon, Marlborough and Newburgh to Wappinger's factories, of course, Highland to Poughkeepsie, Kingston to Rhinecliff, and Tivoli to Saugerties. The only problem with this was that once the river froze and it couldn't be broken up, then transportation would stop. I had a letter from the 1840s which spoke about the ice reaching Poughkeepsie in November or early November. So you can imagine how ice reaching Poughkeepsie in early November, how that would stop travel on the river, coming up beyond the ice limit. Bottom left is a more rural way of travel. You can see the Clinton Corners Railroad Station in the background. And this was the rural free delivery wagon that would have brought things from the railroad into the more rural communities. They have oxen on the yoke there, a young boy steering the wagon. But you can see how slow and limited that would have been. On the bottom right, we have the Poughkeepsie trolley. Trolleys, of course, could bring you all throughout the city, but they were limited to these urban areas. Beacon to Glenham and Fishkill. There was a trolley from Wappingers up into Poughkeepsie. Of course, the Poughkeepsie City trolleys, but that was it. If you lived in a more smaller village or in one of the hamlets, you were not accessible to the trolley systems. So how do I get there? It's a question that everyone would have. Here we are in Newburgh, looking across the Hudson River towards Beacon. The ice can still be broken up, so they're still running the ferry. But you're limited to, of course, just going to Beacon and not further on towards Fishkill or East Fishkill. So we think about the last mile. This is a term that's used with a lot of shipping companies today, where it is cheap to get it from where it's manufactured to a hub of everything. But then how do you get it that last mile, that most expensive part of a delivery, or for travel in general? So here we have the New Hamburg Railroad Station. You do see some stagecoaches. Let me see if I can highlight this. You see the stagecoaches here to the right of the station that would have brought you either up into the village of Wappingers Falls or over to the bleachery factories along the creek. And of course, you would have to pay for this. They're not going to take you all the way out to Myers Corners or further into Dutchess County. So you're still limited to this small radius of where you can get without having to walk or to go to a longer distance carriage. Here we have the veteran stage on the right, owned by Thomas H. Hewlett. He was out of Hyde Park, and he would have taken you from the railroad station either to your estate along the river or into the village itself. You can see how worn this horse is, poor guy. You can see his ribs on the side, so he was a well-run horse for sure. Moving on to how do you move around in the wintertime. This is the J.E. Van Tassel store up in Mount Ross. And you can see he has his delivery wagon, which is actually a delivery sleigh right here on the front of the photograph. And on the left, you can see there's a 2-horse pulled sleigh over here. That could have even been him delivering mail or bringing someone maybe to the railroad station. But again, snow, another thing that would have hampered your travel, just was always difficult to get around in these times. So we have to talk about the automobile, the first early adoption of it. The first steam-powered autos were invented in the 1600s. These were mostly playthings for the French aristocracy to have their children, play around in their beautiful manicured gardens. In the 17 and 1800s, different steam-powered automobiles are invented, but of course they are all hand-built. They're made out of iron. They're dangerous because with the boiling water, so none of them were really able to go into mass production. In 1870, Siegfried Marcus invents the first gas-powered internal combustion engine. He's not given much credit for it. He's kind of lost to history, as he was a Jewish inventor and of German origin. They were trying to erase him from really the history books. In 1885, Carl Benz creates the first automobile that enters mass production. Of course, we know him as the Mercedes-Benz brand today. But he is pretty much taking a carriage, a horse carriage, and adapting it with internal combustion engine. So in 1885 and 1889, Gottlieb Daimler and Maybach invent both a motorcycle and the first automobile from scratch. And by scratch, it means that they built it as an automobile from the ground up, not adapting it from a carriage, but actually creating an automobile. In the 1890s, the United States begins producing autos. This included the Duesenberg, but these were very expensive, very detailed, almost made by these carriage makers at the time. Fantastic details, but extremely expensive, and only the most wealthy could afford them. 1913, Henry Ford invents the assembly line. That's the same year that the Model T would come out, and that would really bring the automobile to the masses. So here we have in the top right corner a photograph of the Rhinecliff area. And we can see the people with their two most prized possessions. We have the dairy cow on the left, and we have the Model T on the right. So it really shows you the pride that people had to show that, you know, they had made it, they are successful, they can afford one of these early automobiles that are really a novelty. In the bottom left, again, people showing off their prized possessions. You have the two horses that would have carried their carriage or wagon before. And then we have the new, brand new, what was it, 1914 Metz Roadster. So it's a beautiful car here. Of course, this one would be hand built, not made by an assembly line yet. But the beautiful spoked wheels here, the crank, of course, start. That was very dangerous. That if you caught it at the wrong angle, it would whip around and break your wrist. So even having one of these early automobiles was dangerous in and of itself. Moving on to the electric engine, most people think that electric vehicles are more of a modern thing, but they're actually the earliest automobiles and delivery trucks were all electric. So 1832, the first electric car is invented by Robert Anderson in Scotland. It was very much of a novelty. It only made it around his estate. In 1889, William Morrison of Des Moines, Iowa, debuts the first electric truck using a delivery wagon. So he puts an electric engine on the bottom of like a moving truck or moving wagon and calls it the first truck. 1890s, the electric vehicles gains in popularity. We have here the FP Silvernail Furniture and Piano Moving Company. It's in an early electric truck. Here it is at Mansion Square Park. As you can see that wooden wheels here, hard rubber tires. This was a very rough ride. Electric vehicles did not have very much range, unlike today. Could only really be used within a city setting itself. So between 1910 and 1912, electric vehicles reached their heyday, mostly, and as I said, in the cities of New York, Chicago, Detroit, delivery trucks for the most part, going short distances. Here's a view of Philmont, New York, a view of another electric truck. This was a touring truck. It would have taken you from the railroad station up to the hotels in Philmont. You can see the driver is standing here. He has his long jacket, mostly because there is no glass in the front of this truck, and it was a very cold ride. So you would have your own attire to ride in an automobile or a car for the day, because you just had no protection from the wind. Beautiful searchlights, headlights over here, carriage lamps. These are adapted from the horse-drawn carriage. You have the horn right here, which is used, you step on it with the air bellows right here. And of course, the stick shift that this man is leaning against. 1913, Henry Ford introduces the Model T with an electric starter and a gas-powered auto. So you think of your auto today, you also have an electric start. So the electric engine kind of morphs and merges with the gas-powered engine. And that's what made the Ford Model T so popular. It was more reliable, didn't have that crank start that was so dangerous. 1920s to the 1930s, cheap oil coming out of Texas and Oklahoma outcompetes the electric vehicle. So it's just much cheaper to fill it with gasoline. The combustion engine was easier to produce, and it could get you further and easier to refill than to charge. So what are the challenges of the new automobile in Dutchess County? This is a view of the old post road in Fishkill, an old postcard. So this is Route 9 today. And if you think this would be Chipotle and Five Guys on your right, you would have Cracker Barrel over here on your left, and 84, the interstate would be going across in front of you. So if you look at this road, you see that it is a dirt road. It is very well rutted out from the horse and carriages. And it just was a challenge to, update these roads and make them passable for an automobile, and to bring them to a state where you can actually have be safe enough to have it up to speed, because these horse and carriages are maybe going 10, 15 miles an hour, where the early automobiles going about 15 to 25 miles an hour. So you have to build the road. You have to build the road out. This is a view of them widening and constructing Route 22 on the eastern part of Dutchess County. You can see they're digging out the road to make it wider and smooth it out as well, adding large rocks, smaller rocks, just the same way that they made these Roman roads back in the day, make them more durable. Another view of them constructing Route 22. You can see they're adding fill here, filling over the larger rocks, trying to get a more smooth and even surface to the road. Another view of them creating Route 22. Here you have the old steam-powered steam roller. You can see the large rocks that are on the roadbed now. Those are being pressed down. So smaller rocks would be put on top of that, and then finally sand and then dirt to really fortify that road. Here's Clinton Corners. They're working on the highway. This would be Salt Point Turnpike. So if you're paying the toll on the turnpike, you better have a good road, right? So here they are leveling out the road. You can see it down the road here that they've already been working on it, trying to create a ditch on the side for water, and then of course trying to get out all the ruts and create a smooth surface. You can see people are even coming out from the village itself to see the work being done. It's not being done by an automobile yet. It's still being done by a horse-drawn leveler. So this is a view of Poughkeepsie. Here's some beautiful Vassar girls kind of having a joke with the sign with their dangerous curves. But the dangerous curve is the roadway here. So they're asking you to slow down, the Poughkeepsie Auto Club, just because this is a shared roadway. People are walking on it. There's horse-drawn carriages on it. People might be stopped on it. And if you're going 25 miles an hour around this curve, you're not going to see them. Of course, the speed now is much faster, but people aren't on the road. So there's less of a danger for pedestrians today as there was back in the day. And there was a danger with these automobiles. This is Dr. Kimball's car in Rifton, New York. He slipped off the road and went down the embankment into the creek. I don't know, I didn't find any newspaper articles about this, whether he lived or died, but it looks like a pretty horrific crash. You can see people coming out from the surrounding village to take a picture with this. You might think that's strange, but the automobile was such a novelty that to get your picture taken with one of the early car crashes would have been something that would have been sent to a relative far away. Just want to note the guy that's hanging out on the, vine up here along the cliff, kind of making light of this serious situation. But it was common to take photographs of these car wrecks. Here's another one out in Cutterbackville in Orange County. You can see the woman here is, pretty shocked and grieved by this scene of him flipping and going into the ditch. Of course, their braking systems were rudimentary. You don't know if he was avoiding something or not paying attention for a second, and that's all it takes. Here's a more 1930s view in Middletown of a truck running off the road and crashing into a tree. Pretty dramatic scene. It was lucky for him, the photographer of this actually worked in the gas station and garage right across the street. So they didn't have to go too far to get help in fixing their delivery truck. So the automobile was also a business opportunity. You have to think of all the different industries that was using a horse-drawn wagon, delivery wagon, carriages. You might think that everybody had this beautiful carriage or anything, but that was pretty rare. That was also mostly for the most wealthy people to have a carriage. And the carriage was only really invented in the 1860s, so it wasn't a long stretch to have a horse-drawn carriage. But the delivery wagon like this, more rudimentary open air, was much more common. So here we have L. Brundage of Billings, New York, which is a tiny hamlet in LaGrange, at his general store. This photograph was taken about 1906, but if we move forward to 1913, here he is again holding his dog. He has his railroad cap on, and he no longer has his delivery wagon, but he has a brand new automobile here parked right in front of his general store. G.H. Wade, who owned the butchery shop down the road, also came for his photograph, but you can still see he still has his early delivery wagon with his two-horse team. So you can see just in that short 7 years how it changed his store and even had the scope of his store. So it's no longer just had to be the small hamlet of Billings, but he could go to LaGrangeville down the road, or Freedom Plains, or up to Burbank. It really opened it up for him. So let's talk about the delivery driver. This was in 1870s. It was in the 10 top most common jobs in New York City. The delivery driver, of course, was extremely important for all of these businesses. In the top left is Frost the baker. He owned one of the largest bakeries in Poughkeepsie on Main Street. Here is his delivery wagon, probably bringing fresh bread to everybody in Poughkeepsie. And he was pretty much limited to the city of Poughkeepsie, but you move down here to the bottom right. This is an early gas station. I think I have it exactly where it was. It was at Smith Street on the corner of Thompson in Poughkeepsie. This building still stands today. Actually, all of the buildings that are shown here still stand today. This, of course, is sadly abandoned, but I just wanted to point out the delivery truck right here. 1930s, at the gas station, gave him much more range, that if you had a farm somewhere in interior Dutchess County, had access to every corner of the county. Coming into the city of Poughkeepsie, bringing your goods down to the city was much less laborious than it would have been with your horse-drawn wagon. This is a view of Cliffside, New Jersey. Now, when I first spoke about the electric vehicle, I said that he had converted a delivery or a moving wagon. This would have been the type of wagon that would have been converted into the first delivery trucks. But here it is as a two-team horse-drawn moving wagon. He has a picture of the Speedway here that was in New York City on the east side. And it just showed, how quick they were for delivering your furniture to a new spot with the quickness of the Speedway. And then here's a more 1930s view of one of these moving wagons. This was the E. Stimson and Son furniture store in East Park, which is near Hyde Park, New York. And of course, you can see how much easier it would have been to put even everything into this truck and move it not just to the next town or the next village, but across the country. No, not a delivery of goods, but a delivery of people. Pleasant Valley, still very close to Poughkeepsie, but it did not have trolley access like Beacon, Glenham, and Fishkill did in southern Dutchess County. So to connect Poughkeepsie and Pleasant Valley, Stephen Maston, shown up here on the top right, came with his own bus. And this bus can be seen in postcards all over Pleasant Valley. He had them at the hotels, at the library. He seems to have positioned his truck to be in almost every photograph at the time to really advertise it. But here's a beautiful view in Poughkeepsie of his bus that would take people from Pleasant Valley into the city. And of course, these buses would eventually replace all of the trolleys. So it really was one of the first buses to, harbinger the change that's going to come in the downfall of the trolley. So the transformation of the general store. Now, your life in a village or hamlet was really concentrated around the general store. The general store, the post office, and the church were your mainstays in your hamlets. So the earlier views of general stores, remember the Brundage store, very simple front, but then eventually you start seeing the automobile sneaking into these images. Here you can see the gas pump that has just been put on the side of the general store, almost like an afterthought of the novel automobile coming into town and needing to fill up. You can see that it's just pretty much a barrel and a pump, very rudimentary. Somebody would have had to go, a helper from inside to come and pump the gas for you, and then see how far the level went down on one of the barrels. But as time progressed, here's another early view of Pine Plains, the general store there before the automobile. So you can see a lot of the small signs. These are all going to attract you from the sidewalk to come into the store. So everything is much more sidewalk focused. Everything is for the passerby that is walking by. Moving forward in time, we have Thomas or the Morgan Corner over here on the left. You can see that the gas pumps have now appeared in front of the general store. Not so much of the small signs along the porch, because it's not really more focused on the sidewalk. It is moving more towards the automobile. So here you have larger signs on top of the building, one advertising the Standard Oil Company of New York, which is, of course, the oil company that is supplying the gasoline for the pumps. Again, here's an early view of Bangor, New York. This is Bullis Hall, old colonial building, probably one of the most iconic buildings here in Bangor. And as we move forward in time, you can see that the Ellis Ferris Company, the grocery store, has leased out giant signs for the State Oil Company of New York. If you can imagine today an old colonial building that is being retrofitted into a gas station, that would be pretty shocking and surprising. But here we are with the gas pumps on the edge of the building. This part of the building has been redone and is more attractive to the passerby driving by. And of course, you cannot miss these giant signs showing that it is now a gas station. So we can also talk about the overnight transformation, that many things, happen incrementally. The roadside changes incrementally, but once the automobile comes in, it really changes the village quickly, especially along these major routes of Route 52, Route 9D, Route 9, and Route 22. So the focus moves from the sidewalk to the roadway. What I say by that is that all the signage is moved away from overhead on the sidewalk to be seen from the roadway. The sidewalk is also a separation between the public walking, the pedestrian, and the roadway itself. The roadway changes to become solely for the automobile, no longer for horses, no longer for crossing the street in undesignated areas, no longer for walking. The roadway is just solely for the automobile. So hotels and business changes their appearance to attract drivers passing by. Signs become larger and more prominent, and gas pumps squeeze onto Main Street. So here's a view of Red Hook. This is the old Red Hook Hotel. This is about 1906. I believe there's some sort of parade going on. Everybody's lining the sidewalks. The hotel is a little bit concealed from the roadway. You can see the vines over here, but it would have been very beautiful walking by. Beautiful foliage above you, keeping you out of the rain. And here we have the Red Hook Hotel in the late 1920s, early 1930s. You can see the dramatic change of the hotel itself. It's no longer has the vine hiding it. It's been completely redone. It's much more attractive. It's painted white, so you can see it from the road. You can't miss it. You can see the big sign for the Red Hook Hotel over it. This isn't for somebody on the sidewalk, it's for somebody driving down the road. Here's another perspective. You have the Red Hook Hotel on your left. More autos here on the roadways. This is a little bit more into the 1930s. Again, look at all the signs, drugstore. Across the street, you have gas pumps. You have a Chevrolet dealer here. No longer do you have the small general store, but it is now the Grand Union. So you have much more national brands coming in. The delivery trucks can now reach your village or wherever it is. State Oil Company of New York sign. And even if when you go down the street, you can see that there's another auto garage right down the street. So competing gas stations, not just one in front of the store, but people seeing that, there is a money to be made here if I can just focus on this new automobile that is just keeps, growing in popularity. So here's a view of Millerton on Main Street. This is an early 1905 postcard looking up Main Street. So the economy of cities and villages accelerates. There's much more opportunity. You could just facilitate towards the automobile, but also it's bringing in more goods, a diversity of goods. It was cheaper to move goods around. So these villages were able to supply people with just much more diversity of things. Villages adapt to accommodate the automobile. And then you have the slow death of the horse and wagon, harness shops, blacksmith shops, livery stables, stock farms. You don't need so many horses to feed these horses. So entire industries are dying while others are growing like this. So here on the right, we have the A.J. Pulver grocery store, advertising boots and shoes and rubbers. Below that, you can see that there's a harness shop with the bicycle repair. And some, very rudimentary, they haven't built the sidewalk here on the left. And if we go forward in time, this is the 1930s, taken from the same exact spot. You can see that the Pulver store is now the Reagan's hardware store. The main focus here is, again, the State Oil Company of New York. He has the big gas pumps here. The harness shop is gone and has been replaced by a larger grocery store. Drugstore up the street. You can see many of the buildings have also changed, modernized to be more appealing from the roadway. You have on your left restaurants and of course the Atlantic and Pacific grocery store. Again, another chain. So where do I buy my car? Where do I find one? Where do I get one of these? I want one. This is a advertising card for the 1913 Model T. So you could get a postcard of this to say, hey, I got some Model Ts for sale. This is your opportunity. Didn't really have a dealership network that we think of today. It's much more personal, small sales, and more advertising just to get you to contact one of the people delivering these. This is Poughkeepsie Rex. This is a beautiful car here. Oh, I think I have it written down. It's an early Chevrolet. And here we have their first mascot. This is Poughkeepsie Rex. He's a dog. And he was used for advertising the Central Motor Company in Poughkeepsie here. Here's another view of the dealership here's Poughkeepsie Rex again in his automobile driving. He has his pipe, his friend down here with the pipe as well. This is the owner of the dealership. And you can see all the Model Ts in the background, all the men that are servicing them, showing that, if you buy an automobile from me, we can service it, we can get everything done here, and you can join the masses of, this new automobile. I always thought it was strange that everyone's looking at the camera and he's looking away with his beautiful white shoes here. But I think that he's just trying to get the dog's attention to calm them down to stay still for the photograph. So this was located on Church Street and Mill Street in Poughkeepsie. So you have the early garages here. They also were selling automobiles. This is F.S. Pulver. We might remember him from the store that he had in Millerton as well. So here you could buy it directly from a garage. You can buy used cars from them. Still not a dealership network like you think of today. And then here you can see the change again. The Pulver store is now a larger garage. They now sell Buicks and Chevrolets. Gas pumps in front, garage on the side, and of course the hotel. The hotel is going to be something that also changes with the automobile. Travelers, tourists. And here's a beautiful view of Millerton. I found this in an attic in Tivoli. This is the Buick dealer. These cars all came on the railroad and were dropped off. It says 8 carloads of Buicks, so 8 train cars full of Buicks. And they would have sent this out to local businesses for them to pin up on their boards to show people, oh, you can get a brand new Buick here in Middletown. So we also had auto manufacturing here in the Hudson Valley. In 1903, the Maxwell Briscoe Motor Company opens its doors in North Tarrytown. In 1906, the factory actually burns down and they move production away to Indiana. But a lot of the early cars you see in the Hudson Valley are these Maxwell Briscoes. You get the best deal since they're built just here on the Hudson River. In 1914, oh, here's some views of the Maxwells that are here built in Tarrytown. Beautiful touring cars. Touring cars were some of the most expensive cars you could buy. They would have been all decked out with all of the, chrome and brass fixtures. 1914, Chevrolet moves in to the old Briscoe plant, redoes the whole thing in the 1920s and 30s, and starts mass producing Chevrolets. Pollution issues were always a problem at the site. They would say that you could tell what kind of car or what color cars they were painting just by the color of the Hudson River at the time. So pollution was always a problem, and they eventually closed in 1996. But interesting to see that automobile production or factories were still here in the Hudson Valley into the 1990s. Of course, in 1910 we had the Fiat Motor Factory in Poughkeepsie. This was built in the Fairview section of Poughkeepsie. You can just see the top of the Hudson River State Hospital admin building here in the distance. So it's close to where Staples is today. There's a McDonald's there, right across from Marist College. About 1912, 350 cars were being built a year, which does not seem like a lot, but you have to understand that these were all being hand built. These were very expensive cars. They weren't, just normal cars being sold to the public, but really beautiful hand-built limousines and such. In 1913, the factory is enlarged to 30,000 square feet and was designed by a local architect, Percival Lloyd. So you might recognize this building as it would later become Western Publishing. I remember it as a kid in the 90s. It was abandoned at the time, but still a very beautiful building right there on Route 9. This is an example of one of the cars that were built at the Fiat factory. This is a 1913 Fiat Type 56 limousine. As you can see, it's just a beautiful car. Wheels all painted, leather straps, brass finials, and side lamps. This sold recently in 2015 for $130,000. But to buy this at the time, with the conversion, it would have been hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy this car at the time. So only the wealthiest of the wealthy could afford it. So in 1918, the factory was repurposed for the war effort. It made munitions. And after that, really, the Fiat company moves out of Poughkeepsie. In 1913, the property is sold to Western Publishing. So we talk about the garage to the gas station. Blacksmiths and Wainwrights begin to convert to auto garages as the popularity of carriages declines. They're able to move their focus over towards the automobile. This is a view of Pauling, the Forstner Brothers garage. See, automobiles repaired, auto supplies. But if you just go down the street, you can see that Slocum's garage on the state road was much more suitable for the automobile. You can see the garage down here. It's also a gas station advertising Texaco Gas, State Oil Company of New York. You can fix your car in here, and there's probably refreshments as well. That this really shows the change of just from the converted blacksmith shop to becoming a full-service auto garage. So we remember the early general store images of the one gas pump in front of the general store. This is now moving towards the own independent gas station. This is the Green Bullfrog Inn in Statsburg, New York. You can see the bullfrog doing a split up here above the sign. Again, a sign that is visible from the road, attract you to stop. You get refreshments, maybe some sandwiches in there or something like that. But if you can imagine these giant oil or gasoline tanks right on Route 9, it was such a hazard. It was so dangerous just to have these asking to be hit by a passing car. So again, the gas pumps move away from the general store. Standalone gas stations start to appear on main roads. and the roadside restaurants appear on the main road. So if you think about restaurants, they that we think of today, your Cracker Barrels and the like, that wasn't something that was really prominent in the United States. Some national brand gas stations start to appear on major road junctions as well. Here we can see this is another view of Statsburg, another the Cozy Inn. Again, gas pumps, but now you can get a furnished cottage, really playing on that tourist that's coming up on Route 9. And then moving more towards the gas stations that we remember um, that lasted until about the early 2000s. This is Walt's Esso Service Center. Of course, Esso would become Exxon and then ExxonMobil at Mill and Washington Street. You had the US mail truck here, really showing how modern Poughkeepsie was becoming. Moving on to the junction of Route 9 and Route 52 in Fishkill, here we have a mobile gas station right in front of the Old Dutch Church and Parsonage. I was told that 3 corners of this intersection actually had gas stations on it at one time. It's funny to think of it now that there would be a gas station. This is the way you kind of go onto Main Street from South Route 9. But very open road. You can see not too much traffic. You got the single traffic light here. And then, of course, your road signs showing how far you are away from your destinations. Another view of these new gas stations that are popping up, these national brands. Here's a Texaco station on the old Dutchess Turnpike. Of course, Dutchess Turnpike is Route 44 today. Coming into Poughkeepsie, you can see the old high school in the background, and advertising, a stop to even stop at the King's Inn here and have a bite to eat. Giant sign here again, of course, says lunch. So as you're driving along the roadway, of course, there's the addition of the billboard to get your attention, to advertise what you need for your car, because not only when you purchase your automobile, but you need to fix it constantly too, which we all know. So here's an advertisement for Gear Ease, which is a lubricant for all the gears in your car. This is an advertisement from Middletown, talking about the need for batteries. So you can see how still your car is fairly unreliable. You're pushing your car in a lightning storm towards a garage. So all of these businesses started popping up to facilitate this need to fix your automobiles. Here's an advertisement out of Newburgh for Polarine Oil, of course, showing that if Polarine Oil can work for these race cars, they'll definitely work on your Model T. So just another way of automobiles now coming into your mailbox and advertising coming to the masses. So where do I fix my car? My car's broken, I bought it, and now it's not working. What do I do? This is a fun advertising card from the Westcora Hotel in Ossining saying that, hey, if your car breaks down on Route 9, then you can you're 2 miles away from this hotel, you can stop for the night while your car is being fixed. Again, you see the man dressed up in his automobiling outfit, the large overcoat to keep him warm. The woman, the Edwardian woman in the background, has her hair all tied back so it doesn't blow in the wind. And of course, you have the mechanic trying to figure out what's wrong with your automobile. So here we are in New Hackensack at the Texaco station. This was an old blacksmith shop, and you can see it's being slowly retrofitted for the automobile. You have the gas pumps out front, advertising, the Ford service station for your Model T, your Goodrich tires, and your Fisk tires. You can see some automobile wheels here and some carriage wheels as well. Just some of the men inside that are going to fix your automobile. So you can see here the move from the blacksmith shop in the Wainwright to the automobile mechanic. Then you get your own standalone buildings. Here is the Empire Garage in Fishkill. This is Route 52 going off to the left. This is Old Main Street that goes towards All Sport. This building no longer exists, but a more modern building for your automobile. Again, catching your attention, bright white, in its own standalone business. Here's Van's Garage in Poughkeepsie. This was right behind the Morgan House on Catherine Street. You can see the map up here. The Van Benchoten family actually would open their own car dealership. Here you can see some of their automobiles for sale in the windows next to it. Strategically built right next to the Morgan House, because if you're driving up to Poughkeepsie, you need somewhere to stay. So the Morgan House or the Nelson House were your go-to. So having your car garage right behind one of the main hotels would have been perfect to advertise. And here's a view of gentlemen that were driving up Route 22. And I guess they had a flat tire, so they stopped at their garage in Amenia. See the proud driver here smoking a cigarette, while here is the mechanic getting the tire ready to put on his wheel. So squeezing cars into everyday life. Here's a view of Beekman, which of course is on Beekman Road, but if you know this building today, you know that it is right on the road, that there is very little space between this front porch and the roadway. So to squeeze a car or automobiles into this was very challenging. Here you have the gas pump on the side of the building to get it out of the roadway, but of course having, you know, this target right here for a car coming north towards the general store is very dangerous. So to get these small hamlets to accommodate the automobile was very difficult. And if you couldn't accommodate the automobile, it would slowly kill your town. If you think of Beekman today, there's nowhere really, no shops there. There's nowhere to really park there. So there wasn't the incentive to go to Beekman. That now it was easier to go to places like Polkwig or Hopewell Junction that had more room, more space for the automobile to accommodate us. Here again, we have, this is Pauling. This is right at the Dutcher House Hotel, but you can start to see the issue of parking starting to come out in postcards. Here you have cars that are doubled up. So two cars parked next to each other on the street. Cars are pointing different directions along the street too. There are no rules. And the street is very quickly filling up. So where do you put all of these cars? Where do you, facilitate this need for parking, which is still an issue today, of course. Here we have Route 9 in Red Hook. Again, we have lots of traffic. The traffic light appears because now you need to control people crossing roadways. Again, you have Grand Union grocery store here, national brands, and again, more traffic, more car traffic coming into these villages. Sidewalk is built up to keep people away from the cars. And again, here's Poughkeepsie. Poughkeepsie Market Street, of course, the large downtown area of Poughkeepsie, all the stores, all the restaurants, and you have every parking space along the sides filled up. So parking becomes a big issue, much more so than the horse-drawn wagons, where you can put the wagons behind, the horses can go into the fields, but here in the urban environment, it's more difficult. So you start seeing postcards of parking lots, which something would be completely strange today. Who would want to see a parking lot postcard? But this was to advertise with the Comfort Hotel that you can drive your automobile here. We have plenty of space for you to park your car, and we can facilitate the touring new tourists that are coming up from the city, and you can park your car and feel at ease. So you start seeing the change in the roadside stop. Here we are again on Route 9 in Fishkill. This is Moog's Farm. It was a tavern since the colonial times, right next to the Fishkill Supply Depot in the Revolutionary days, one of the oldest buildings here in Fishkill along Route 9. But you see it change. It becomes a restaurant. You start seeing more signs. The building starts to change. They have an enclosed porch for you to enjoy an outdoor dining during the summertime. You can see the cars start lining up. Again, a closer look at it, Moog's Farm restaurant. You would be able to stay behind it. And this place has been a tavern or a restaurant for so long, it even is today. Today it is Maya Cafe, the Mexican restaurant, across from the old Duchess Mall. So completely looks different today. You can just see that step-by-step progression of the roadside stop. Here we are on Main Street in New Hackensack, a small hamlet near the Dutchess County Airport. Dirt road, small farmhouses along the road. You would have been here, you would have stopped at the Waranock House on which is now Route 376. Small hotel, colonial era, enclosed porches, just your only really opportunity to stop in this area. But if you came 10 years after this 1906 photograph, it would have been looked completely different. You now have a cement road that's going through town. No longer are you having to deal with rutted out roads, mud, trying to get through, these harsh conditions of these roads. And then you can stop again at the Waranock House, but it looks completely different. It is now painted white. You can see it from the road. They're advertising their delicious chicken and steak dinners, even advertising clams because you can bring them in fresh because the delivery driver no longer takes days. It takes just a short amount of time from bringing them in from the railroad station. So you can just see here the change in just a short amount of time. So the evolution of the restaurant itself, if you wanted to eat out, it wasn't something that you can just drive down the road and see a restaurant. Restaurants were really focused on the hotels themselves. If you wanted to get a nice meal, you went to the local hotel. You went to the Morgan House, you went to the Nelson House, or you had to go downtown in Poughkeepsie to find a nice restaurant. Here's the Pompeian Room in the Morgan House Hotel in Poughkeepsie. You can see they're advertising this beautiful white cloth service. Here are your chefs, of course, all culinary change. The head chef over here on the right. The main maitre d' waiter is over here on the left. Here's a picture of your Morgan House. Here's the head chef again. Here's the head waiter over here. So it's a very proper and thought out experience going to the restaurant. It wasn't something that you would just go out on a whim. But that changed. So pre-World War I, restaurants were mostly connected to hotels or taverns outside of large cities. By the 1920s, the automobile sales explode to 8 million to 23 million. So you can really see that large jump from the 1910s to the 1920s. Roadside refreshment stands open to catch customers driving by. They were usually associated with a gas station. Stop to get gas, run in, get an ice cream, candy, or sandwiches, get back into your car, and continue on your trip. But that slowly again changed by 1935. You can stop at Scotty's Coffee House on the Wappingers and Fishkill Road, which was Route 9, and you can stop and stay at one of their beautiful cabins up here on the hill, park your car right in front of it. So this would have been your first iteration of like the roadside motel, but it's also connected to a restaurant. So kind of a one-stop shop. Moving along, here we are in Poughkeepsie, Route 9, just south of Poughkeepsie. You can see the campus building, another big restaurant connected to the gas station. This is probably about late 1920s, but by the 1930s, the campus has grown, much larger. Now it is less focused on the gas part of the auto experience and much more about the restaurant experience. Now, passerbys no longer have to get gas. They can just come in, have a nice lunch or have a nice dinner, and it became a destination for dancing and bands and music, and it really changed the thought of what a restaurant was. Here's the Colonial Tavern, again, another just solely restaurant and not a gas station. I wanted to bring this up and show everyone because this is where Hudson Ribs and Fish was for a long time in this building. So you can see that these restaurants lasted for, the building still stands, it's a restaurant today, that over almost 100 years, that restaurant has been serving customers in different iterations. So I just wanted to bring up the Beekman Arms. This is one of these hotels where if you lived in Rhinebeck, this is where you would have went to the restaurant. They had, of course, a tavern downstairs. I just want to point a couple of things out. You can see over here, there is almost like a taxi cab stagecoach to bring people from the railroad station up. You have another probably stagecoach that came up from Route 9 over here with a 2-horse team. It's a very enclosed space. This is what it used to look like with the upstairs porch that went across. what is very beautiful from the sidewalk, but of course you see it from the road here. It's hard to see it. It's a little bit disguised by all the trees, but you move forward and then it is redone for the automobile. You can see that they've taken out the enclosed porch, they've opened it up, they've painted it white. It is much more striking and visible from the road. So you can see they're reopening it in May in 1930 to show all the new improvements. You see the automobiles here are replacing the stagecoach that came up. And of course, the early bus here that would pick you up from the railroad station is no longer a horse-drawn wagon. Give you another impression of the Beekman Arms. Again, this is probably taken in the early 1930s, showing that difference of how noticeable and prominent it is now on the street corner. Now, if you're standing at the Beekman Arms looking the other way, you have, again, the Beekman Arms sign that could be seen from the road. You still have the gentleman on the horse-drawn carriage across the street. Of course, now you have the early Model T right in front of the hotel. And tucked in between these two buildings, you have the early garage. So a much different change dramatically and quickly in front of the Beekman Arms. So moving from the restaurant, you have the diner. The diner is a very automobile-centric invention. The first ones were horse-drawn lunch wagons that would appear on the streets of places like Worcester, Massachusetts, and Providence, Rhode Island. Just pretty much carriage converted into a place that would sell to-go food. In the 1890s, the lunch wagons gained popularity and gravitated towards the railroad stations and factories. Here we have this view of Mountainville, which is near Cornwall, New York. You have an old Pullman car being taken off of the train and being reused for another purpose. These would be reused at a camp where you could actually stay in this, tucked into a field. I'm sure it was blazing hot in the summertime. But you can see these train cars, popping up next to the railroad station. This is Cokertown, New York, which is outside of Red Hook. A tiny little hamlet was just pretty much a station stop. But you can see that this old railroad car is being repurposed for either a freight station or storage. Moving further, again, here we come to the lunch wagon that, again appeared in the 1890s. This is right across from the Erie Railroad Station in Deposit, New York. Sadly, I couldn't find one in Dutchess County. Displaying quick lunch from an old railroad car that's been redone and retrofitted to become a small place to get a sandwich or a light meal. Then you move forward into the 1930s and 1940s. You start seeing them popping up away from the railroad station up into the village itself. Here's the Deluxe Diner in Millbrook, New York on Franklin Avenue. Of course, there's still a diner here in Millbrook. So it's still something that carries on until today, but it really gained popularity in the 1920s to the 1940s. Here's the Rhinebeck Diner. Again, a retrofitted dining car from the railroad, and then they start building them diners themselves to reminisce to those earlier diners, but are just fabricated themselves to be a roadside attraction. Of course, we've all been in these early diners that still dot the landscape. They don't have booths yet, which would become very common, but they do have this early counter service. This is the interior of the Rhinebeck Diner that sadly no longer stands. We still have one of these early diners in Red Hook if you ever want a really good breakfast. It is packed though. And here we go, we're moving into the 1950s. This is on Main Street in the Arlington section of Poughkeepsie. Today, this is a Dunkin' Donuts that no longer stands. But just mention a couple of the cars. Of course, we have the early Beetle here. This is a shout out to my brother, if he's listening, that I did research these cars. We have the 1956 Mercedes 190 SL. We have a beautiful Lincoln Cosmopolitan, and of course the Chevy Bel Air over here. So another quick roadside stop. They popped up in almost every single village and community, especially in the Northeast of New York and New Jersey, having multiple that you still see around today. Although I have noticed that diners are becoming fewer and fewer, that the appeal of diners is waning. So let's talk about the tourist itself, that how do you get to places? How am I going to use the auto if I'm not driving from my original destination? So if you stop at a railroad station like this in Pauling, you would have had all your taxi cabs and waiting for you to pick you up and take you to your next destination. Driving north from Pauling, you could stop here at George's Tavern and Restaurant, um, fill up your gas tank, and of course stop at the restaurant or the tap room where you could get a nice cold beer for your drive up Route 22, which I do not recommend. And then you can stop at your Broadmeadows Inn. And a lot of these early hotels and inns were retrofitted from old houses. So you had a large house, you didn't need all the rooms, why not rent it out? So think of it as like an Airbnb or a bed and breakfast today. And this was very common to retrofit these houses. This is a house on Route 52 and Carpenter Road in East Fishkill, early 4-on-4 colonial style house. And then by the 1930s, it's been completely retrofitted. Foxley Hall, it is now an inn of distinction on Route 52 in East Fishkill. And today, this is still used the same way. It is La Chambourg, which does have a restaurant and catering as well. So you can see how this house moved from an early colonial house and then retrofitted into a hotel. So the next thing I want to speak about is infrastructure. How did the automobile change the landscape and change the roadway in Dutchess County? This is a view of Pleasant Valley coming west on Route 44. Here you're coming to the old cotton factory over here, and the old covered bridge ahead of you. Of course, they're telling you to slow down to 4 miles an hour. They already have a sign for automobiles as they don't want people racing across this bridge. This bridge was really built for horse-drawn traffic, and it really wasn't built for the automobile. So you have to change it. You have to adapt your village to the automobile. Here, they've taken away the covered bridge and they put in a very large cement bridge. This allowed automobiles to drive at speed. You no longer had to slow down to a crawl or look around the corner to see if a buggy's coming. This bridge is solely built to accommodate the automobile. And this happened all over the county, all over the region, all over the country. All of these old bridges had to change. They had to be repurposed or rebuilt. This is the Fishkill Creek Bridge in Fishkill, New York. Of course, this is Route 9, having a small iron bridge on Route 9. And Fishkill was not going to last long. You have the old horse-drawn buggy on it, and this would be redone to be built into a large steel bridge. Now you can go 40 miles an hour across this bridge and not have to worry about that horse-drawn wagon. And infrastructure was everywhere, where it wasn't just on the highways or even in the cities or anything like that. They had to accommodate the automobile everywhere. Here's going down to the Rhinecliff Ferry. They had to build this bridge to accommodate the automobiles coming off of the ferry and going down to bring goods in. And you can see that Rhinecliff would even advertise this to show how modern their village is now, that you can still bring your horse-drawn carriage, but now it is, we have the railroad station, brand new, and now we can accommodate you bringing the automobile across the river. So bridging the Hudson, for the longest time, it was ferries taking you across the river, and there was really no way to physically get your automobile other than putting it onto a ferry. Here is the Mid-Hudson Bridge that would be built in 1930. It was delayed for many years because of the steamer. They were afraid of where these abutments were going to be built. So there was a lot of back and forth of how to even fit the bridge into the river to make boating traffic safe. So Mid-Hudson Bridge built in 1930, a beautiful Art Deco bridge taking cars across the Hudson. Here it is an aerial view looking into Poughkeepsie, but you can see how they just carved this into the city, tearing down buildings. I was read that there was a bookstore close to where they put the entrance to the bridge, and they were piling books out of that store as they were even tearing it down. So there was a lot of opposition to the bridge itself, and of course, it's carving its way into Poughkeepsie today. If you think the arterial, it's changed this entire section of the city to accommodate that automobile. Interesting to see, actually, this is Route 9 going up. You can see it's still just lined with cars as it is today. So not even the bridges, but roadways themselves changed the characteristic of the Hudson River Valley. Here we are on a steamer coming up the Hudson River, passing Storm King Mountain. You see that there's a quarry here at the base of it. But if you move forward just another 10 years, you can see that they have carved a road, forever changing the mountainside of this part of the Hudson River. And this was to get automobiles from Newburgh into West Point. So you can see just the huge endeavor it was to carve this road and how important they thought that easy access was for the automobile. So what would you do in the wintertime if you couldn't get across by automobile? Here's a view of 1917 when the bridge froze over. The ferry could no longer run, so you have people walking across the Hudson River to Newburgh. Pretty scary thing to do. I guess you just walk in everybody else's footsteps. But I did meet a woman in New Hamburg that actually met her husband by him driving his car across the river from Cedar Cliff over to New Hamburg to attend a dance. So even she was impressed by this gentleman and his bravery for driving across the river, and the automobile caught her attention. So you can see just on a human personal aspect how the automobile was also changing things. Here's the Newburgh Beacon Ferry coming into Beacon. This is from the Beacon Historical Society, but just to see the crush of people coming into Beacon, that there was such a demand for space at the ferry terminals that even the car couldn't fit because there were so many people coming across. Here you have a day liner that is also packed full of people. So how do you fit in automobiles, or the amount of automobiles you want to come across the river, if it's also packed full of people in Panama hats? Here's a view of Nyack. This is the Nyack ferry. Of course, the Tappan Zee Bridge would replace this eventually, but you can see the crush of automobiles that are trying to get across. The ferry has just come in. All of these cars are coming off, and all of these cars are waiting to get on to get across the river. This is a 2-mile drive today that would take maybe 5 minutes, but this would have been a laborious task of waiting hours to hopefully get onto this ferry or having to wait to the next one. The interesting part is all the signage around here is also focused on the automobile. You have the State Oil Company, you have Champion spark plugs, all the parking over here, the gas pumps, auto supplies, restaurant over here, that even the ferry service or the river is now focused on the automobile. So I got to build a bridge. Here's the Newburgh Beacon Bridge. This span was built in 1963, radically changed the area, now connected Newburgh and Beacon with only a 1-mile bridge, allowing easy access and spelling the complete demise of the ferry system. Here it is in 1980 when they built the second span, the sister span. So just 17 years after the first span, it was already too small, and they had to accommodate the second span. And of course, the Kingston-Rhinecliff Bridge would replace that ferry as well. Kingston-Rhinecliff built in 1957. The first bridge to really span the Hudson was at Bear Mountain in 1924. So that would focus a lot of traffic into Peekskill and across that narrow span. And then, of course, the George Washington Bridge, one of the largest on the Hudson, built in 1931. So how did it change the social aspect of everyone? This is a man, they're taking a tour of Route 22. I believe this is somewhere in the Minya area. Again, you can see how cold it is. You can't, insulate your car here. He's wearing a giant fur coat, but it was also a status symbol. You coming into town with your fur coat, who knows where you came from? You're a newcomer in this beautiful automobile, you're going to turn heads. And just your personal relationship with your automobile. Of course, people name their cars and everything like that, but this was a celebration, a parade in Armenia, and you can see that they have decorated it with roses, showing off not only their artistic skills, but their beautiful car underneath. Another view of a different or the same car, all dressed up for the annual auto parade. You would take it out, dress up your auto, and then you would vote on who has the best auto, the best decoration on their car. And before that, your entertainment in the wintertime or racing, if you were interested in the need for speed, here you are on the Hudson River in Poughkeepsie, and you can see that there's a horse-drawn sled competition here. This gentleman looking at the horse-drawn sleighs and the Poughkeepsie Bridge in the background. But that would move from horse racing to more automobile racing. This is a view of the Dutchess County Fair when it was in the Arlington section of Poughkeepsie, and the big car race that was a major draw for the fair. Here's an advertisement for it. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be big. 1910. Of course, the automobile is still a novelty then, and cars going maybe 30, 45 miles an hour were, remarkable. That the amount of speed that they could take on. And again, another novelty. Here's a view in the early 1910s of a Fiat racer racing an early airplane. This was also at the Poughkeepsie Fair. This car was not made in Poughkeepsie. Poughkeepsie didn't make the race cars for Fiat, but it was an advertisement for them to show just how safe and fast their cars were. Of course, the car won the race. Airplanes at the time could only go about 10 miles an hour. It was mostly just for effect. So I have my car, it's fixed, I know where to get gas, but where do I go? What do I do with this? One major change was, of course, the street signs that would have to be put up everywhere. No longer could you get just figure out where your rural road was, but you had to name it. Highway signs were put in, so everything was labeled so that it was easy access for the automobiles. Here he is putting up the street sign in Millerton for Main Street and Dutchess Avenue. Of course, you have your arrows pointing of which direction the next town is in. You have the Campbell Hotel here in Poughkeepsie, and you would get postcards that would have maps and directions on them as well. So you can see how to get there. A lot for the people down in New York City for taking their drives up into the country and showing where you can stop on your way. So you have your family vacation. Look how thrilled these people are with their family vacation. This is them on Sylvan Lake. You can see their automobile in the background. That the family vacation became, it was almost invented with the automobile. That now you could leave New York City and you can come up to Dutchess County. You can stay at one of our lakes or one of the beautiful boarding houses along the river and take your family and have some, relaxation out of the city. And of course, you get the roadside signs and the roadside attractions. Mount Beacon, the incline trolley, was of course invented or established in 1902, but by the 1930s and 40s, it was a very great roadside attraction in Beacon. Here's a view of everyone that came up by car that saw the sign that would go up on the Mount Beacon incline. And of course, you have the Woodcliff Pleasure Park. This was at the end of a trolley line initially to bring people in and to use the trolley, but by the time the automobile came, this was a huge attraction in Poughkeepsie. So giving you a destination to have with your car. Then again, you get your roadside stops, you get your roadside novelties and quirky designs to really draw you in. This is the old cider mill in Balmville. This was a very popular thing to have these early Dutch windmills in the area. Of course, we're a Dutch history to it. This actually still stands today in Balmville on Route 9W. I believe it's an early car dealership today. And you found this all over Dutchess, or all over the county or region. This is Rockland County and Rockland Lake, the old windmill. Here's another one, the old Dutch mill on 202 in Peekskill. This actually still stands today too, no longer has a windmill and is now abandoned, but still the shell of this early roadside stop. And other places like the lakes in Putnam County was another draw to bring people up from the city. You can see all the cars parked here in the parking lot, and it gives you an activity to do with the miniature golf course, which kind of correlated with this roadside stops. Here's Bonnie's Inn in Fishkill on Route 52, and you get a map here to show you how to get there. This was to advertise how to get there from the Taconic Parkway. And you would have dancing here, cocktails, the cocktail hours, cocktail bars, and things like that, other events to bring you in. So let's bring it out to 1950s to today. You have the Taconic State Parkway coming in. It would reach Dutchess County in 1938, and it would reach Red Hook by 1955. So you can see how much of a endeavor that was to build this highway. Here we are in LaGrange from Route 55 looking north on the Taconic. And of course, if you have a big roadway, you need to have the roadside stop or the parkway rest stops. Here is a restaurant that is in its full 1950s drive-in glory with your hamburgers and French fries. This building also still stands just above where Daily Planet Diner is today. So again, Daily Planet is just a newer reiteration of this type of parkway stop. And then you have the um, thruway, of course, that came on the other side of the river that was built between 1954 and 1960. This is a view of Mountainville, and this would pretty much spell the death of Mountainville as the hamlet itself over here on the right. Now that you have these large highways, if your town isn't off the highway, it's good. All the business is going to move up to the next exit. So here we have Mountainville. If you drive down there today, you can still see the hamlet on the side of the highway, but you can see the effects of it being bypassed. And you have your beautiful hotels. This is the Holiday Inn in Fishkill. Wouldn't you love to be in this pool in the 1950s? You think of the Holiday Inn today, you wouldn't think of it as a destination, but here you get to stay at one of these beautiful modern rooms and enjoy yourself and your family vacation in beautiful Route 9 Fishkill. And this is a view of Poughkeepsie, of steak chops order from the House of Eng. This would have been the early takeout spot. Bring your car, get your food quickly, take it home, and then slowly this would turn into the drive-through, the drive-in, and then the drive-through. And finally, we come here to a more modern postcard, probably from the 1970s. You can see Route 9 over here going across the image. You see all of the roundabouts getting onto Spackenkill Road and going to the IBM complex. You see the giant parking lots here built larger than the building itself to accommodate all the workers and people coming to your establishment. Parking lots that even extend over here out of the picture and even in the background. So you can see how the landscape is now fully focused on the automobile and no other form of transportation. You don't see trains, trolleys, buses. It's all on the single use or for the single person automobile. And then you see the movement again towards the car dealership. No longer are you getting a postcard from a ragtag dealer. You come into your established car dealership here that even has its own service center and is a one-stop shop for your Mercury and Lincoln cars. And I would like to thank our sponsors, Healy Brothers, that have generously sponsored this talk for tonight. Just again, another reiteration of the dealership. This is their brand new dealership on Route 52 in Fishkill. You can see that the car dealership has now moved from your family owning just one car dealership to owning different brands and connecting them all together into one large company. So family-run businesses are growing, different brands under one ownership. And I just want to finish off with this last image. This is a view of Monroe, New York, as the publisher assumed it would look like in the future. You have this overhead tramway, trolleys, motorcycles, cars, but really, he didn't really have it, or even blimps. He was too close. He mostly should have just put a bunch of cars in this image. As the trolley would die out, of course, blimps never happened. Public transportation like trains really would go out with the bus, and everything would just be focused on this automobile. So thank you very much for joining my talk. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it went a little bit long, I'm sorry. But if you have any questions, I'd be open to questions.